as always, coming at you guys ready to spit all the knowledge we have on hockey and baseball. And just like last weekend, for the foreseeable future, we're going to have a lot of news on both fronts, with both seasons really hitting different points here. And we're excited to get to all the breaking news that happened after last week's show. Of course, all the important news has to break from last week. And the biggest piece of news, the MLB playoffs are upon us. The first game went down yesterday. I'm not going to spoil too much because we will be discussing it today. And of course, I cannot do it alone. As always, Iceman Jurg coming to you guys to lead things off with my partner in crime. I would say he's the ace of this rotation. But my guy, the leadoff hitter, the power hitter, he does everything. He's a five-tool player, five-tool podcast host, ladies and gentlemen, James Barcia. James, how we doing?
Oh, Jurg, it's my favorite day of the week. I'm doing amazing, bud. I mean, there's, as I say every week, nowhere I'd rather be than here. But yeah, man, it was serious last night. I don't want to get too into it real quick, but it was a crazy game last night. We're having a little crossover episode this week. I've been over to Somewhat Sports, but we're having one of the guys over on this show, and it's going to be a good time, Jurg. I'm excited.
Indeed, we will. So for anyone who probably remembers one of our early episodes where there was a bit of a Freudian slip to the beginning, I do another podcast called the Somewhat Sports Podcast, and one of my guys there will be on the show today. We're going to bring him on in just a couple moments here to help us break down all the baseball talk in the world, because already starting off a pretty interesting game, to say the least, last night. The final score may not have been technically close. It wasn't a blowout, but it wasn't, a one-run game either. But it was still a game to sink our teeth into and to have some discussion about, to lead us into it. But before we get to that, I do have to break some NHL news that occurred. Of course, like I said, all the news breaks after, like the day after we record, James. I think around the time the podcast got posted last week, this breaks. So, of course, I have to wait the entire time to talk about the NHL. Why do you always do this to me? But in reality, finally, after weeks and probably months of criticism towards them, the Vancouver Canucks got their act together, and they were finally able to sign their two young studs who were RFAs this summer. Elias Pettersson and Quinn Hughes both finally inked deals. Quinn Hughes actually inked a pretty nice contract, a 6-year, $47 million deal, a 7.85 cap hit per. And Elias Pettersson signed the shorter deal, a bridge deal, a 3-year deal, about $22 million with a 7.35 million cap hit. Both guys finally signed. Vancouver finally gets those contracts done. And I'm just going to say, and I'm keeping it simple, I'm not going to dive too in-depth to these deals because I feel like I've mentioned both guys on the show and I've said my opinions. I feel Pettersson is outstanding forward. He's a star going on superstar. Same with Hughes. He's honestly superstar offensively talented, but defensively he has to clean everything up. But finally, Vancouver, you finally did everything. You got the job done. You got your guys signed. It was concerning for a long while. James, because, we had the stuff weeks ago. Well, feels a little longer than that actually at this point. But back when Montreal and the Carolina Hurricanes, they had their whole offer sheet fiasco. When that happened, myself, Logan, a couple of us hockey fans were like, oh, is someone going to do this to Vancouver? Is Vancouver about to get really trolled here? But no one did it. They let them figure it out with Hughes and Pettersson, and they got both guys locked in. I can't say anything else aside from the fact that I do like both deals. I think Hughes will continue to grow. I think Pettersson, this is just for him to get more money down the line. I got to say, a bang-up job that they finally did get it. James, when you saw this, was your first thought like, oh, finally, Jurg is going to give the Canucks some credit on the show? Because I haven't given them a lot of credit since we started this podcast. I really have not.
No, I still didn't think you were going to give them any credit, Jared. Come on, I think you stay true to who you are, and I still believe it. And I'm actually shocked you gave them just a little credit. So kudos to you.
Hey, I am more. Well, I wasn't technically wrong. I have called them stooges during the offseason for not figuring this out quicker, which I stand by. But they did finally fix everything. They finally got their guys under contract, which is the most important thing. That's all you can ask for sometimes. It really is. But, bang up job by Vancouver. They got both guys signed to good deals, like I said. And I just think for the organization going into the season with Pacific Division wide open, your guys are locked in now. They are, preseason's already started, so they're going to be with the team finally. They're going to reconnect. May take a little bit of time to start the season, I think, for them to really get into gear. But I think both guys overall, they're going to be just fine in regards to the 2021-2022 campaign and trying to help Vancouver with all they can. But hockey news out the way. Like I said, doing it really quick. For those that joined us last week we did an Eastern Conference little preview. The West will be going on next week, most likely, barring any schedule changes. But the Western Conference breakdown will happen next week because, of course, this takes all precedent. This takes all credence. James, the MLB playoffs have started, and I am absolutely excited.
I mean, Jurg, I am just as excited, if not more excited, and I'm sure the fans are excited as well because I'm sure they're tired of us talking about the whole playoff pick, because these last 2-3 weeks of the season have been kind of insane. Playoffs been going left and right. We almost had a 4-way tie at one point. I was hoping for that. It wasn't even for the fact that the Yankees needed to lose for that to happen. It was strictly for the fact that it was a 4-way tie, and I never thought I'd see that ever in my life. But we did get a crazy game yesterday. But I mean, Jurg, if we're gonna jump right into the baseball, without further ado, Iceman, let's go. Intro our future guest today.
You're right. Future and soon to be right now. So, like I said, one of my cohorts on the Somewhat Sports podcast that I do separate from our platform here on Off the Ball Network, a guy who knows his stuff when it comes to he's a savant. He knows his basketball, he knows his football, he knows his baseball. Loves writing about baseball. This guy, he's put up a couple of articles that towards the end of the show when we let everyone shout their stuff out. Of course, we're gonna let him do his thing because he knows what he's talking about when it comes to the game. Big baseball fan. A slightly hurt Yankees fan, so you got to give him a little bit. If he sounds a little bit bitter in the talk of the wild card game, you got to forgive him a bit. Well, this is one of my guys who I've personally known for a good bit. Love talking to him. Do a show with him on the weekly basis. And Bars, he's our type here on Bunts and Bruises. May I present to you all, close friend of mine, friend of the show, my guy Dame.
How you guys doing today? I'm personally not doing too great, like you said after yesterday, but I'm happy to be here, happy to be doing the show today. So here we are.
Thank you for coming, man. I know it hurts to get on. I know it's a rough one, but in due time, you're gonna be all better, man. Probably when you see Boone get fired or whatever, it may happen there.
Oh, yeah.
But do you want Boone to get fired? Speaking of, since the subject,
I do. All year before this year, I really was fond of him, and I like a couple years ago, 2 years ago, before the COVID year, I did think he got robbed of AL Manager of the Year. I thought he did an amazing job that year when they had all those injuries and they still were a 100-win team. But after this year, like when they went through all these ups and downs, mostly downs, he just had some really questionable quotes at times, and to me, that really signaled that he was kind of out of it and he just wasn't doing the job he was supposed to do. So a team with this kind of lofty expectations, you just can't be giving quotes the way he was about like being positive and this and that. Like sometimes you just got to get on the team and just be honest and be like, listen, we're not playing well. Like we need to get better. Not stuff like we need to hopefully get better. We need to hopefully do this, hopefully do that. Like I just thought he needed to be more like straight on about it. So I personally will let him gone, but we'll see.
For sure. And the main point that you brought up, I actually love the fact that it was all his quotes. That's one of the main reasons he should get fired, because the main reason they did hire him was because he was in the media before. So you figured he was going to be that perfect person to deal with the New York media. And the fact that he's fumbling the bag right there, you're right. It's looked like he's out of it and it's time to go. But earlier today, we'll talk about the game in a little bit. We'll deeper into the postseason game. But earlier today, I wanted to jump into this real quick. My New York Mets, unfortunately, got super unfortunate news. It's bad news for me, even though we weren't in the postseason. It's the worst news I could get right now. But I had high hopes that we had Theo Epstein come in here and be the president of my sad organization. But unfortunately, him and Steve Cohen apparently decided real quick he wasn't the right fit. And it's kind of crazy to hear from a guy who helped the Red Sox after, what was it, like 186 years or something like that. And then the Cubs, it was like 126 years from winning World Series. And then he looks at us and he's like, yeah, no, sorry, nothing I could do. It's kind of a smack in the face, but I can't blame him because you got Steve Cohen over here. Yes, thank God he opened up his wallet and he got rid of the Wilpons being cheap and whatnot, but he got them Twitter fingers, man. And it's just really, I feel like that's hurting. And that's the main reason Theo probably isn't coming to the Mets, because he's just like, I want zero to do with anything of this, because Steve Cohen acts like a fan. And yes, he is a fan that did buy the team, but that's just bad business, man. He's got his heart tied to it. And he's not thinking with his head like a good businessman should be. What's your thoughts on why Theo probably isn't taking this job, and who might be a good spot for the Mets to take?
So honestly, I never thought Theo was going to be a realistic option, because just throughout the year and then when he was let go by the Cubs, I thought a lot of the stuff I read was just that he wanted to be involved in baseball, like the baseball offices, just making a better on-field product and trying to help the commissioner with that and just all those baseball people. So I didn't really think he was interested in coming back to the front office. And then today I read he's also interested in like forming his own ownership group one day. So like obviously not being part of the baseball offices on the field, like helping the on the field product. Like obviously, if you went into the Mets front office, that wouldn't really help both sides of what he was trying to do. So I never really thought he was a realistic option. I thought he was kind of like that pipe dream for really any team that's looking for a general manager, but specifically the Mets. When you mentioned the Steve Cohen thing, like I do agree. I do think obviously it was an upgrade from the Will Ponds. Like that was just bad, but like he really does act like a fan. But he needs to realize like he's an owner of a baseball team. Like you really can't be tweeting every day about the result of the game or what you're thinking. Like that's something you keep in house. You talk to the general manager, you talk to the manager, you talk to the players, something like that. But he shouldn't be going on Twitter about it. But who I think they should go after next? Well, I thought it could have been Billy Beane from the Oakland A's, but then I saw today that that's unlikely to happen as well. So that kind of sucks. But honestly, I think they should just go for anybody in the Dodgers or Rays organization because I'm always a believer. Same thing I thought with the Knicks in basketball, just to cross over a little bit. Like when they're looking for a general manager or like any scouts or anything like that, like I always just look to these organizations that keep getting it done year after year, player development, stuff like that. So I always thought they should go somewhere with the Spurs, the Heat, the Warriors, teams like that. So with the Mets, I think they should be looking maybe not for a big brand name, like say a Billy Beane or a Theo Epstein now, but they should definitely look inside the Rays organization or the Dodgers organization to see if they could bring out and develop their own kind of general manager and make him a big name in their own organization.
For sure, man. I completely understand and agree with that. You mentioned the Knicks. You look at the Nets. They got Sean Marks coming out of the Spurs organization. Jurg, what was your thoughts earlier today when I texted you that Theo said no to the job? I know you know I was hurting. So what was your thoughts?
It didn't really surprise me because I think you guys have summarized it best. When you have an owner that, yes, while it's nice that Steve Cohen is more willing to open the checkbook, while it's nice that he's a relatively involved owner to an extent, he sometimes goes too far. And the thing, like you guys have said, when you're tweeting every single thought you had, at some point when you're criticizing the players on the field, you're kind of indirectly criticizing the general manager who brought him in. Now, this year, it didn't really matter because obviously none of the guys that the Mets brought in were going to hold that job long-term or didn't want to hold the job long-term because they wanted to be scumbags in their previous occupations in life. But irregardless, my thing is that had he hired Theo Epstein, and let's say the Mets start solid next season, but then they have like a bad 10-game stretch. If he tweets something about the roster not clicking, like Theo Epstein is just like, excuse me, I put this team together. What the heck are you talking about? So like that, and like Dame said, normally there's discourse between the general manager and the owner, but if the owner would tweet that, that discourse is no longer private. It is fully public, and it creates a story that doesn't need to be there. So I can't be surprised if Theo Epstein just didn't want to deal with that, pony and clown show where it's like, yeah, no thanks. I'm not going to go somewhere where my decisions could get tweeted by my boss, for Christ's sakes. So no. In regards to what you guys have talked about, who could replace him, I don't have a name off the top of my head, but I love what Dame is going at, where don't go after the same retreads. Don't keep going after these guys that, yes, while Epstein and Billy Beane and them have had success, like at some point they don't want to do it anymore. Right? Like at some point they want to move on. Like we've heard before, Billy Beane wants to do things outside of just managing a team. So I think the idea of someone in the Dodgers, someone in the Rays organization, the Red Sox have actually, they built themselves back up pretty quickly. They collapsed after their last World Series, but now they've built themselves back up. Obviously, they're a playoff team again. Other teams who have gone through a bit of rebuild recently, the White Sox, who finally built up this team in the prospect pool. The Padres, yes, they flamed out, but again, building up there's all these organizations that have found success recently in varying forms. You should look at people from within there because they're learning from people who are finding success. And I think the top two, like Dame said, it's the Dodgers and Rays. And that's what the Dodgers did when they hired Andrew Friedman. They look at him. He was working with the Rays. Like, let's bring this guy over and look what he's done. Look at the amazing drafting he's been doing. NL Rookie of the Year after NL Rookie of the Year. Look at the roster he's built. Like, yes, they're still paying a lot, but they've cut out all the terrible contracts. You can't name one bad contract on the Dodgers anymore, where earlier in the early 2010s, they had like 4 or 5. So that's a job well done by him. And that's what I think the Mets should go for, because let's be real with the Mets. And I'm sorry, Bars, you guys probably going into next year have 2 or 3 bad contracts on the roster right now. You probably do.
Probably more, man. Probably.
So what you have to do, you have to find the guy who is going to be there long term, who could probably clear out some of that money and help build from there. I think that's what the Mets should go for. don't keep going after the names because you've been trying to do that for a decade and it hasn't gotten you anywhere, right? Like, learn to build.
In defense, we've been going for names, but they can't afford the names until the past year. So in defense of the going for the names thing, but you are 100% right. I do agree with you on that. But let's jump back, quick 180. Let's go back to this big Yankee game. We didn't really get deep into it. We didn't pay it enough respect. Just had to quickly throw in my misery with this breaking news from this morning. But, misery loves company. So sorry, Dan, but we got to get a deep dive into it. What was your initial reaction when I'm just going to go straight into it. So on the wound. Sorry, man. Your initial reaction when it was bottom of the first, and just boom, 2 runs right there off the rip from Garrett Cole.
I mean, obviously it wasn't the start I envisioned, but like at the end of the day, it's only 2-0. And this Yankee team, and Yankees have always been known for their great hitting. They're called the Bronx Bombers for a reason. So I wasn't too worried that they were down 2-0. In most cases, like I kind of like my team being down at first in the beginning, as long as it's not too big of a deficit. So I was okay with being down 2-0. Like this offense should definitely be able to get more than 2 runs. And I wasn't worried that Cole was going to implode or anything like that. Like, he made a bad pitch to Bogarts, an off-speed pitch over the plate, and I thought it was going to be fine. Obviously, that wasn't the case with Cole at the end of the day, but as for what I thought in the second inning, I wasn't too worried because I expected the offense to start clicking and score more than 2 runs.
Were you shocked when Aaron Boone decided to pull Cole after 2 innings, even though it was only 2 runs?
And initially,
3 runs actually, I think it was at that point.
Yeah, it was 3. Yeah, initially I was shocked because I was like, damn, like you're paying this guy, like let him get out of it, let him work out of it. Like I've seen him, I watch every Garrett Cole start. Like I might not watch every Yankee game, but I watch every Garrett Cole start because he is basically the most important player on the Yankees. So I've seen him get in trouble and work out of things like that. But initially I was like, well, what are you doing? But as the game went on and I saw how dominant that bullpen was, I kind of understood his decision. It's like it's a one game go winner, go home kind of deal. So if you see anyone struggling, you just got to pull them. You just got to go to the next guy and just trust that. So then I eventually understood it. But in the beginning, I was very confused on why he did it.
Jurg, before this game today, we spoke a bunch about, the sticky stuff situation on plenty of episodes. We even mentioned Garrett Cole, even when Josh Donaldson called him out, and then Garrett Cole basically threw like 10 plus strikeouts the very next game. Do you think that has anything to do with how his performance happened here in the playoffs, or you think it's just completely unrelated? It's just bad game for, a great pitcher?
I think it's unrelated because when you look at what he did ever since that whole sticky stuff situation early on in the season, he put himself firmly back in the AL Cy Young Award race. Like he became like he struggled a little bit when it first happened. Everyone was throwing the barbs at him like, oh, can't do much with that sticky stuff, right? And then like you said, like Josh Johnson calls him out 10 strikeouts his next start. Like, and he had which month was it where his like ERA was like sub 2 or around something like that? Like he was just putting up start after start, W after W. Like, yes, he has bad starts, and I think that's all you got to chalk it up to at the end of the day. Like, even aces, even dominant pitchers, they will have their bad starts. You look at all of MLB history. Like, Randy Johnson's had a bad start in his career. Nolan Ryan has certainly had bad starts in his career. All these guys will struggle, and I think that's just the case. Where Garrett Cole, this is the thing. He's so excellent. We're so used to these one-game situations he's going to show up that when he finally doesn't, we're going to point to that immediately. But I don't think that's fair to him. I just think that the Red Sox caught him on the worst possible day. I think at the end of the day, like Dame said, the final score was what, 6-2, right? Boston won? 6-2. 6 runs? Like, you can't produce more than that? So that's my biggest thing to kind of switch the convo off now. It's like, to me, the most shocking thing was the fact that the Yankees offense just could not get going. And I know in part because I saw some of the highlights in the replays. The Green Monster, man,
oh my God.
Yeah.
I hate that Green Monster.
Stanton, I forget, I heard the stats earlier, like Stanton's long shot that he had that hit off the wall.
It went 400 feet.
Yeah.
It's a home run in every other stadium.
Yeah, in every other stadium, that would have easily been a homer. But obviously the Green Monster, it's not. And that's just something where it's like, I understand you want to try to point to Cole, but like you said, they pulled him after 3 runs, after he allowed the 3 runs. The bullpen played pretty good, still allowed another 3, but that's not insurmountable. 6 runs is not something crazy. And that Yankees offense, especially how they were performing these last couple weeks to secure their wild card spot, That's the biggest disappointment to me. Like yes, it sucked to see Garrett Cole didn't perform well because you love great players having those great performances. But that Yankees offense is the one that needs to draw the most ire because that was not good.
I mean, considering the fact that you had to start bringing in the bullpen at the third, bullpen played phenomenal, realistically. They played way more longer than they should have. But let's talk about the biggest moment that everyone's going to be talking about during this game. It's already, hang on, sorry, I want to make sure I get the right box score. There you go, perfect. Rizzo hits the home run. It's 3-1. Judge is there on the second. He gets on first. And then we have Stanton hit deep center. He goes to second. Someone waves. I forget who was it. Waves Judge over across the plate. Yeah, exactly. And it was just the worst call you could have possibly done at that moment. He's out. And it felt like a balloon deflating. All the air was just let out of the room because you knew it. That was the moment right there that this Bronx Bombers offense, Dave's mentioning, was supposed to come back up and just, get this lead back. At any point, did you think they had a chance to basically reboost it and try and get it back? Maybe do one more second win game?
Man, of course, as a Yankee fan, I'm always going to be optimistic. Like, I was out at a restaurant yesterday with a bunch of friends. Like, I'm not going to sit there and be like, damn, this game's over. And I think it was like the 5th or 6th inning or something like that. Like, of course I saw it hope, but at the end of the day, that was so deflating because you get Judge on first. Stan hits a shot, home run in any other park. And you could have had second and third with 1 out with Joey Gallo coming up and then Gleyber Torres and stuff. Like, he could have got another run in with an out, like, and then it would have been 3-2. And a lot could have changed in that. Baseball is a very momentum-driven game. So at that point, Red Sox have the momentum. But then Rizzo hits the home run. Judge gets up. Stan hits another shot after he hit the first shot in the first inning. Like, you could see the momentum swing in the Yankees' favor. Then, boom, perfect relay from the center fielder to Bogarts to the catcher, gets Judge out. And, boom, all the momentum swings back to the Red Sox. And at that point, it's like, damn, this is going to be extremely, extremely tough. I don't know if they're going to pull out, but of course, as a Yankee fan, I just had to have that hope and faith that they could have, but it wasn't looking good.
I love that you acknowledge it. Like, as a Yankee fan, I was all in no matter what. Jurg, so as the the non-biased third party as always, how did you feel when you witnessed that moment? Were you as optimistic as Dame was? Like, it's the Yankees. They still got it.
Right. Like, just on a talent perspective, I'm always going to assume that a team should still continue to come back, should have their moments. And like Dame said, there were a couple moments later in the game, but just at the end of the day, man, like, it felt like it. When you see it, even looking back, like I've watched that same play about like 3-4 times today, and I'm just like, yeah, at that point, it felt like the writing was on the wall, on the green monster wall, that the Red Sox were just going to take it because, like Dame said, like I don't think we talk about this enough. Like, momentum exists. I fully believe momentum does exist, and when you have something like that happen, it's not physically where momentum is the thing. It's mentally, man. And baseball, I think, of all the sports, you could argue is the most mental when you're up there, because it's literally like your coach can tell you everything when you're before you get to the plate, while you're on the bases and all that. But when you're up at that plate, you're literally by yourself, and it's you against the pitcher, technically the catcher, but you and the pitcher 1v1, mano-y-mano, and you get outdone. And when you see that happen to your teammates, that starts to put the doubt in your mind, like, where is my hit going to go? How far am I going to get? Does it matter? I hate to say it. And kind of like what we talked about with Boone, it's all about how in are you. And I really do think some of the Yankees players got psyched out after that happened. I really do. And it sucks to say, because I think that team this year, with how they were performing to the end, there were some feels there that they could have and probably should have made a run to at least the ALCS. But hey, it happens sometimes in these one-game scenarios that teams that we thought should have made a run, should have done better, just get wiped out. And hey, that might happen tonight too. For all intents and purposes.
I love how you brought it up, Jurg, because speaking of momentum, we got to talk about one of the hottest teams towards the end of the season. Their postseason odds were like at 1.5% at one point, I believe it was. Like something outrageous. But here they are. Ending the year, I believe it was 17-plus game-winning streak. But we got the St. Louis Cardinals at Los Angeles against the reigning champs. Adam Wainwright versus Max Scherzer. It's two of the best offenses in the league. It's everything you want. Unfortunately, you got Mad Max injured on the Los Angeles side. So that's a bat, not only is it a big bat, but that's a locker room presence. A guy who's been there, done that with the team, reminds everyone how he's a baseball player. I love saying that, Jurg. It's a terrible description for him, but he's a baseball player. He loves the game. He plays all infield positions, all that. It's just a guy you need in your locker room. But regardless, we got the Hall of Fame lineup of Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenado, Yadi Molina. And then you also have the young hot gun and Tyler O'Neill and Tommy Edman. It's just this game might be as good, if not better, than the game last night was, and emotions are going to range high. Going into this game, who do you think has the advantage, Dame, and who do you think overall is just going to end up winning it?
I think this is going to be a better game than it was yesterday because, well, maybe that's just biased because the Yankees lost, but these two teams are just, I think, better than the two teams that played yesterday. The Dodgers, obviously, although they are the wild card, they did have over 100 wins and the second best record in the league. Just sucks that they were in the division with the Giants. As for the Cardinals, this team midseason was kind of in the hunt, and then boom, out of nowhere, 17-game win streak, and they absolutely demolished everybody else who was going for that second wild card spot. So again, with the momentum, like Cardinals have momentum right now. Although the Dodgers have just been good all year, the Cardinals have that momentum riding from that 17-game win streak. So they're going to ride that into this game. However, Max Scherzer versus Adam Wainwright, like I'm going to give the edge to Max Scherzer. He's been there in the postseason. He's done it. He's won a World Series with the Nationals. He's been in these one-game go home or win games, but the Dodgers just have the better overall roster to me, from starting pitching to bullpen to lineup. That's why I'm probably going to go with them, as well as the home field advantage obviously always helps. Don't get me wrong, although the Cardinals have been winning away and home. But just Max Scherzer being there doing that, and the Dodgers just having a better lineup and a better bullpen compared to the Cardinals is why I think the Dodgers are going to end up winning this game. But I'm very excited to watch it. It's going to be a great game, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Cardinals win. Like, I don't think it's a lock that the Dodgers will, but that's just my hunch that the Dodgers will come out on top at the end of this game.
Jurg, are you with the overall consensus as well that the Dodgers are going to end up winning today, or do you think the Cardinals could, pull one out of nowhere?
The thing is that I actually do think the Cardinals could potentially pull one out of nowhere. Like we said, like we had a couple weeks ago with Kenton on. The Cardinals are my sneaky team here, man, because they're dangerous. They've pulled to form, and it's always the St. Louis Cardinals. For all of we got three confirmations here that the entirety of our lives, the St. Louis Cardinals have lived by making it to the postseason out of nowhere and can make a run here and there. They got to World Series within the last 15, 20 years. So anything can happen with this organization, man. It really can. That being said, however, I will favor the Dodgers just because they have been the team that I have picked this entire time to win. I'm going to stick to my guns. I'm not going to shy away. There is some concerns about Mad Max, but here's the thing that I think with playoff baseball, I feel like you always got to remember it when playoff baseball first starts. Teams don't go 5 deep in their starting rotation anymore. They predominantly have their main 3, right? And if the Dodgers feel they need to pull Mad Max early, whoever their 4th or 5th starter was during the regular season, they could put him in as their quote-unquote reliever if they choose to. Like that's one of the ways, that's one of the strategies, that you can do in the playoffs. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Dodgers try to do that, because I think in this game, for certain, like the goal for them right now is just to win this one. And game 1 of the NLDS will be game 1 when they get there / if they get there. Right now, it's all about surviving tonight. And I think that's what their ultimate goal is going to be. Max Scherzer, like you said, Bars is a little bit dinged up. I still have confidence that he could go. I mean, he may just pull out another vintage performance and he goes 7, 8, and maybe all 9. But I would be shocked if he has a pretty good 5, 6 innings and the Dodgers have a solid lead. I could see them go into the bullpen early to try to close it out. And like Dame said, the Dodgers have a good bullpen. This team just always finds a way to have good arms there that if they need to go to, they can. And it's more the same this season. It really is.
For sure. I'm reading right now. Dodgers have won all 11 of Mad Max's starts. He's 7-0, and he has under 2 ERA. It's 1.98. It's just, how could you ever bet against that? And you, Jurg, I know the Washington Nationals were listening to our podcast because you were saying before anyone, even before it was a whisper of a rumor, you said it. You said Nationals should trade Mad Max, and here we are, Mad Max on the Dodgers. I think this game is going to be amazing, man. I think if not a pitcher duel, because Adam Wainwright has been doing amazing as well. He has a 3.5, which is, It's not the greatest ERA, but that's a good ERA nowadays, especially with the way the ball's flying out.
He's found the fountain of youth, James. I'm convinced that man is about to say,
yeah, 40 years old, he's in NL Cy Young consideration, so it's kind of wild. But it comes down to the bats, man. It's whoever could show up basically at the end of the day and match the ball out of the stadium. But regardless, whoever ends up winning tonight, I can't wait to watch this, is going to have to play, in my mind, the best team in baseball, and that's San Francisco Giants. Just, quick breakdown for everybody real quick. In the NLDS, it's San Fran holding number 1 spot. And then on the other side, you got the Brewers and Atlanta Braves playing in the next round. But let's bounce back to this. Do any of these teams have a chance against the Giants, Dave, if whoever wins, whether it be the reigning champs or the hottest team in the league right now?
I do. I think either one of the teams have a chance, but specifically the Dodgers, maybe because I picked them. But regardless, these teams have had their epic matchups throughout the regular season, battling for that division title. But if they were to match up, I would pick the Dodgers to win that series. Based off the fact that I just overall think the Dodgers have the best roster in the entire league, top to bottom. But I just think the Dodgers have the postseason experience that the Giants might not have. I don't know when the last time the Giants were in the playoffs, but I know a lot of these players are now on that roster. The manager wasn't there. Most of that rotation and lineup wasn't there. I know they signed a lot of guys to one-year deals this offseason, so I definitely know they weren't there with the Giants for these past few years. But the Dodgers, this team obviously won the World Series last year, and they brought back most of the same roster. Max Scherzer was in the postseason. He's in the World Series. He's a champion. So is Trey Turner. These guys have been there and done that. So I would have the Dodgers taking that series over the Giants. Although I do think it would go the full 5 games and it would be an absolute epic showdown.
Oh, for sure. But Battle of California right there. Jurg, I'm not even going to bother asking you because I already know you got Dodgers winning it all. So let's look on the other side really quick right now. We got the Brewers versus Atlanta. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jurg. Last 2 weeks ago when we had Ken on, you had the Braves as your dark horse, right?
That was his, actually. That was
his. Oh, sorry. So, well, let's
shout out Kenton.
Shout out to Kenton. But bouncing right back to you, Jurg. This matchup, who do you think has the advantage? Who do you think is coming out, and why?
It's going to be interesting here because I think when you look at both teams' rosters, like we said, there's really a lot of similarities between the two clubs. There really is, right down to the fact of who their top 2 pitchers are, where you have Max Fried and Charlie Morton on the Braves. You have Woodruff and Burns on the Brewers. You have some pretty good hitters on both sides. Not exactly spectacular names per se, but guys who have had good seasons, performed well. I mean, granted, I got to give respect, Freddie Freeman. I know he's a baller, but still, on both sides, it's pretty even. And they also have superstars who aren't going to factor in the series because Ronald Acuna is injured. And Christian Yelich, like I said before, he's not injured, but he might as well because he's been terrible this season. I think a lot of people don't realize it until you look at the stats. He's fallen off the face of the earth this year as a former NL MVP. Cody Bellinger kind of has 2, by the way, for the Dodgers. I don't know. There may be an NL MVP curse going on, that we're not talking enough about, boys. Just saying, we got to look at it. But I think ultimately, when it comes to both teams, I think the difference, and we kind of alluded to this, it was last week or the week before at Bars, where whoever gets to the other team's aces is ultimately going to win this series. And I got to believe that the Braves lineup has the better odds of getting to the Brewers' aces, just because of the fact I think if I had to put the 4 guys in front of me, Fried, Morton, Woodruff, and Burns, I might take Burns first, respectively, because he has been great this year, but I think Woodruff is last. And so I think having the 2-3 of the top 4 kind of matters to the Braves. I really do. And I look at the depth of hitters, Bars, when we talked about the trade deadline back when it happened in our little review of it, we mentioned how the Braves got a bunch of hitters at the deadline. And I think it's for this exact reason, to where they're going to throw some different lineups. There may be in games 1 and 2, when it is going to be Burns and Woodruff, they may take guys out for pinch hit opportunities after just 2-3 at bats, try to throw off the Brewers a little bit, try to get them to maybe go to their bullpen. And we said it last week, the Brewers bullpen had a massive blow to it when one of their guys decided to try to be Amari Stoudemire for an early Halloween costume. So all that being said, I have to lean slightly towards the Braves here because I believe their bats will get it done. I can't necessarily say playoff experience because both teams that, they've both made the playoffs in recent years. The Braves were in the NLCS last year. The Brewers, it's more than a couple years ago, but they were recently in an NLCS, relatively speaking. Both teams have guys who have been there, who have made the playoffs, who have had good performances. I just think it's all about who's going to catch fire at the right moment. And I have to think that this Braves team can do that and would want to do that, because I really do think this is a prime opportunity for the Braves here and what they could do for the playoffs. Like we've talked about the last couple of years, it's all about taking steps. They need to take a step as a team here. They need to at least get back to the NLCS. After the heartbreak of last season, they at least need to get back there. Anything less than that, I think, would be a disappointment.
I disagree with you, believe it or not. For once, I think the Brewers are the better team here. I think it's the pitching. You already mentioned it. I think Woodruff and Burns, and yes, they did lose Devin Williams last week because he decided to punch a wall, fire hydrant, whatever. Something jumped out at him. Who knows? Regardless, but they still got Josh Hader back there, man, and it's just the Brewers. They're not a sexy team at all. At all. But that's exactly what you need in the playoffs to win. They do all the little things. They still steal the ball. They play good defense. Yes, they got Christian Yelich, who is god awful. I drafted him in fantasy. I don't know why, but regardless, I think they're the team that's going to end up winning. But I could 100% get why you're saying, Jurg, because overall, if it does end up coming to it, you're right. Atlanta does have the better offense. Dame, whose side do you think more and why? Because honestly, it's just really this could be anyone's game. It really is a toss-up out, I think, all the matchups.
Yeah, absolutely. This is probably to me one of the most evenly matchups in all these playoffs. Like these teams are so evenly matched. The Braves with their hitting, like you said, the Brewers with their pitching. But I'm gonna have to side with you on this. I have the Brewers winning this series. It's just their pitching at the end of the day is why I would go with them. Overall, the Braves really haven't been that good this year. Like they look like it because they won the NL East, but they didn't have 90 wins. A lot of these teams that they even make the playoffs, like the Blue Jays, would probably win that. They would have won that division if they were in it with their 91 wins or something like that. So overall, I think we kind of overlooked that part that the Braves really weren't that good. And for most of the season, they were sitting third or fourth in that division behind the Mets and the Phillies. So for that, I think the Brewers, who have been pretty steady throughout the season because of their pitching, like you said, although Devin Williams obviously celebrating and breaking his hand and being out for a year is going to really hurt them. I still think they have enough starting pitching and enough bullpen to win that series against the Braves. So I think Ronald Acuna, if he was there, though, I think that would have made an extremely big difference because he is a big game player, and we've seen him come up in big moments in the postseason. But just based off how these rosters show up now and the way that regular season went for both these teams, I'm going to have to side with the Brewers on this one.
Both teams with outfilders that just screwed my fantasy team. Yelich on one, Acuna. Regardless,
he hopes neither of these teams can win, make it to the World Series.
If they could tie, I'd be happy.
Endless extra innings in Game 5. That's what he wants.
But speaking of toss-up, this is, I think, the closest matchup. But let's bounce over to what I think is the second closest matchup. And another, I'm just going to be excited to watch this series as well. And we're talking about the Houston Cheaters, Houston Astros, and the Chicago White Sox. This is just it's the sexy team that just came out. They're young. They dealt with a whole bunch of injuries, but then they came back with injury. They got back and got healthy towards the end of the year. You had Lance Lynn coming out of nowhere and being almost a Cy Young pitcher. And then you got Houston on the other side who just, cheating, not cheating, whatever it may be. They keep winning. They know how to do it. Simple as that. And the worst part about it is they think they're smarter than everybody. But regardless, we're not going to get into that. Who do you got coming out of this one, Dame, and why?
Well, again, this is another matchup that's so even. Like you have Houston with their hitting and their experience. Like they've been there, done that, cheating or not. Like they just, like you said, they find a way to get it done, which is why it's more frustrating why they cheated. But I'm not going to get into that. But their hitting has been spectacular, the best in the league this year. And then you have the White Sox, whose pitching has been absolutely stellar with Lance Lynn, Lucas Giolito, and Carlos Rendon, who have all pitched like aces this year. And they have that dominant bullpen with Liam Hendricks and Craig Kimbrell at the end. And, of course, that hitting. Although it's young, like it's got the job done with the starting pitching they do have. This is really tough for me to pick between the two teams because it could really go either way. But I'm going to go with the Astros and their experience and their hitting that they have. I just think at the end of the day, although pitching is so important in the postseason when you need that one starter to win you that one game, I think hitting is very underrated when it comes to the postseason because hitting could beat any kind of pitcher, and hitting as well swings momentum, in my opinion. So with Carlos Correa, Altuve, Bregman, and that entire lineup, I think they're going to eventually get to these White Sox starters who also haven't really been there in that postseason, haven't really done that compared to like the Astros hitting, like I said. So I think it's going to be a spectacular series, and I'm personally going to be rooting for the White Sox because I hate the Astros and what they did, but my gut is telling me that the Astros are going to take this series at the end of the day.
For sure, I think you're right. Where it comes with the young team and the White Sox, just they haven't been there yet, So it's the bright lights for them right now, especially due to the fact that, like I said, they were beat up and injured most of the season. They just finally started coming together towards this last month of the season, and even so, you got Eloy Jimenez, who he was hot and then he wasn't hot. You got Luis Robert, who he was same thing. He's been a little streaky lately. I think he's back on a good hot streak. Jurg, who do you got winning, and why is it the Astros, essentially?
Wow. All right, then. No hope for the Chicago White Sox on this
I
podcast.
know my co-host. Simple as that,
No,
sir.
no hope for the Chicago White Sox. I hate it when you're right. Yeah, I was leaning towards those boys because I do like young teams. I do like exciting teams. And I will say, Lance Lynn and Carlos Rodon do kind of scare me in regards to what they could do because, like, obviously both guys have had such good seasons. Really, that starting rotation, like Giolito had a pretty good year. Cisse, however you say his last name, one of the few last names I don't really know on the show. Cisse, hey, right the first time. Let's go, boys. He's had a pretty good year. Like all four of those guys, their ERAs are well below 4, and especially when you look at Rodon and Lynn. But I do have to go with the Astros ultimately due to the fact, like kind of like what we've said, by hook or by crook on what it's been recently. Like they're proving themselves again. Carlos Correa looks like a phenomenal player once again. Yordan Alvarez has become, I think, in like another 2 to 3 years, his name's gonna be up there in that AL MVP consideration once again. That kid is talented. And if Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Shohei Ohtani didn't exist, maybe his name would probably be up there more. But those two guys were just like historically special this season. You kind of forget some of these other guys. Like Yordan Alvarez was a 3,100 player this year. He's a really good guy to have in that rotation that after after George Springer left, you're wondering where you're going to get some of that power from. He stepped right in easily. Gurriel on this team, he does well. He does good as well. He's one of their top batting average players. Jose Altuve, once again, after struggling back in 2020 when everyone thought like, oh, did he really need all the cheating? He's a sham of a player. Once again, he hit like just a tick below 320 on the season. Carlos Correa, I probably said his name already, but it's worth mentioning twice because he is electric. He's talented. We're talking about guys who have been there before, who have showed he's hit big shots for this team before, big home runs to make it to a World Series. So I do have to lean towards the Astros in my analysis here, but I will say I wouldn't be surprised at all if the White Sox actually pulled this out, because I think if there is one thing that could get the Astros caught, it's great to elite caliber pitching. And if the White Sox can harness that, then I wouldn't be surprised if they're the ones that advance here, because I think you said it yourself, Dame, like how do you counteract great pitching? It's with great hitting, but it's also the same the other way. How do you counteract the great hitting? It's with great pitching. And earlier in the season, like our midseason awards, James, Rodon and Lynn were both of our like AL Cy Young candidates at least, and are like top 3, top 4. And for the most part, like Rodon and Lynn have both still performed well, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see some performances like that again, because those guys have been good, and they've been much needed for this White Sox team this season.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with both of you guys. You look at the offense that Astros have, and like we've all said, been there, done that. But when you're starting game 1 with Lance McCullers, albeit he's having a good season, it's, I'm not feeling comfortable. It's not like when you were throwing out Garrett Cole or Justin Verlander or even, what's his name, Zach Greinke out there. And then you got Framil Valdez, the young gun. He hasn't really been there. He's pitched phenomenal this year, and yes, he will be something great. But he hasn't been there. He hasn't done that. He's going against Lucas Giolito, who, correct me if I'm wrong, he won the AL Cy Young last year, right? Or he came in second?
I think he came in second.
All right, regardless, either way, he was a candidate. Yeah, I forgot. Well, but regardless, you got 3, like everyone's been saying, 3 AL. Sorry, bugging out. I got a lot of stats here. There's a lot going on here. I got the playoff standing bracket. I got numbers. I got names. We need a producer, Jurg. We're getting too big for this. But regardless. The only thing that I got against the White Sox is you need all three of those guys to be on the top of their game for them to have a shot. And it's more likely that the offense for the Astros is going to click together and get those run support they need than it is for the White Sox to have each individual pitcher end up having a phenomenal game. And then you got to trust the bullpen. And although Liam Hendricks and the rest of the bullpen has been phenomenal, you got to trust them to carry it almost every other game too. I'm not liking the probability chance. But regardless, I'm not hearing a lot of good probability for the team that won yesterday. We're going to start off with you, Jurg, because I've been trying to delay this long enough for Dame to, just take a breath and give us an honest opinion. But with you, Jurg, not even who, because I think we all know who. How do you feel about this matchup with the Tampa Bay Rays, who were in the World Series, as everyone knows, last year, playing the Boston Red Sox, winners of last night?
It's going to be interesting. I love it when divisional foes can face off against each other in the MLB playoffs. I think it just adds something extra. And I think on both sides, it's the Red Sox coming off this big win over the Yankees, now wanting to try to see if they can make a run here after a couple seasons, ever since that World Series. Like we said, they collapsed. Like, let's just be honest. Let's call it like we see it. They absolutely collapsed. There were doubts going into the season. All three of us, I could say this for certainty because I do shows with both these gentlemen on a weekly basis. All three of us had doubts about the Boston Red Sox coming into the season. Pitching was the number one reason for it. And their pitchers, well, at times have kind of, reverted back. They've had relapses into previous performances. Those guys, for the most part, have been better this year. And I think the hitting core being back and healthy, JD Martinez looked like himself again this season, as well as the rest of that core. I think the Rays have a lot to prove here because I think despite how good they've been, I think a lot of people would love to point to the fact that, you got to avoid the Yankees. Now you're facing the Red Sox. Last season, you got to avoid the Red Sox. The Yankees weren't a factor in your run. Like, just all this stuff in regards to what the Rays have been. I feel like a lot of people tried to little brother this team for a long time because essentially the entire AL East is little brother to the Red Sox and the Yankees. Like, let's just call it as it is. They are little brother to those teams. And I think the Rays have something to prove here. And look, man, they've built up such a talented roster. They have from good young players on this team like Glasnow and Randy Arozarena to the veterans that they have. They made an addition or two at the trade deadline as well when it didn't really feel like they had to. They just did it because they can. Like, this team just has talent, man. And the Rays feel like the kind of team where they should win this series. I'm not going to say handily. Like, this series to me is definitely going 4. Maybe a game 5 if Boston can catch fire in one of these games. But at the end of the day, I have to give it to the Rays because I think heartbreak from last season sets in. I think they're going to be, motivated to, at minimum, make it to the ALCS once again because they want to try to get back.
Dame, I'm going to assume you're, not even assume. I know you're 100% diehard Yankee fan, and this is kind of like a pick your poison situation, but common sense tells me you're going with the Rays because you just want the Red Sox to, just get flumbled. But
look, yeah, I mean, I do have the Rays winning, but at the end of the day, I have no bias in this because I hate these teams both equally. The Rays, just for the past couple of years, we've not been able to beat them at all, and the Red Sox is just a lifelong thing, just not liking them. But I'm going to go Rays here, and I'm going to go with them in 4 games. I think they just have an overall better roster, hands down. And I never was a believer in this Red Sox team throughout the regular season. I just thought they've been really overachieving with the talent they do have. Props to them, though. Like, they've been overachieving compared to, like, my Yankees with their roster. They've been underachieving. But at the end of the day, the Rays have the better pitching from starting pitching to bullpen. I think they have a better situational hitting as well. This Red Sox lineup, with JD Martinez out with that ankle after tripping over second base, it's so funny. But the funny thing is, too, he does it every time he goes onto the field. It's like a superstitious thing. So I'm going to keep doing it after this or not, but just throwing that out there. But the Red Sox lineup really comes down to Devers and Bogarts, and if they're not going, then that offense really is go. But as for the Rays, they could go 1 through 9 in that lineup and bring guys off the bench in the 8th or 9th inning that could come up and give you big hits, which is why I have the Rays pretty much winning this series dominantly. We're just going to give the Red Sox that one game just because they're probably going to win one of the games at home. But overall, the Rays just dominate this series and go pretty far in this postseason, in my opinion, because I've seen them all year long just get it done. not only against the Yankees, but against other great teams as well. And they win different kind of ways too. They could dominate you with their starting pitching. They could throw out a bullpen game here, there, and dominate you that way, or they could just score 10 runs on you, even if their pitching isn't going. So I've just seen them get it done over and over, different kind of ways.
And it's just crazy how good this team is, and they just can't fill up the stadium no matter what they try.
That's so sad.
But so just one last question about this series. Do you think I mean, you made it pretty clear it has on the backs of the two gentlemen you mentioned, Endeavors and Bogarts, but do you think there's any other possible way that the Red Sox could somehow figure something out to maybe take the series?
It's hard for me to see it. Like, obviously, Devers and Bogarts, I don't think they're enough to carry an offense. I think it would just come down to the Red Sox starting pitching, just pitching so much better than they actually are. Like, say Chris Sale comes out and he's the Cy Young pitcher he was in the past. That won him a game. Maybe another game where their starter pitcher goes 5-1 run, and then their bullpen goes absolutely shut out. So maybe that's the kind of way, but I don't think their hitting is really what could win them the series. It would just be their pitching that kind of overperforms what they are really are.
For sure. Jurg, do you think there's anything they could do?
I think Dame said it. I think you just have to hope that your pitching just takes it to that next level. And you really got to rock the Rays pitchers as well. When you look at that Rays roster, again, it's kind of, we talk about how well built they are. There's not really a spectacular name on that team in terms of pitching. Tyler Glass now technically has been, of course, like he's so talented. But the rest of that lineup, like, you can conceivably win any game. I think it's kind of a coin toss when you look at it in regards to every other game. I would be really interested to see what Alex Cora does with that roster. But at the end of the day, like, I just find it so hard, like you said. And the thing with baseball is, like, this sport that rarely happens, but we're really putting a lot of stock into the teams that have been so good this entire year, continuing to do that in the playoffs. And sometimes it happens and sometimes it doesn't. And what are the Rays to us, right? But I think it is the perfect storm because, like, we're talking about all the pitching with these teams. The Red Sox are the team where the reason they will win is because their pitching had to take it to a whole different level. Like the Astros, yes, their pitching is fine, but they could get by as long as their hitters do their thing and their pitchers are, regular. Same with all the teams we've talked about, right? We don't need to go too much into detail with the Giants and the Dodgers and some of those teams. But the Red Sox, they would have to be the team where their pitchers just, from 5 to like a 12 on a scale of 10. They would have to do that in order to conceivably get a couple wins here and to get the series to a game 5. And then when it gets to a game 5, hey, then anything is possible. But until we see it, like, you have to give the Rays their credence because this is probably, I know they made the World Series last year. They've made the World Series at least one other time in franchise history. They've had good teams. But you could probably argue this is the best Rays team there's ever been. Like, this is probably maybe the most talented team they've ever put on a diamond. And this Red Sox team, just isn't the right team. I think Dame brings up a point with the Martinez injury. Like, yes, there's still some hitters on this team, but it's just not enough. It's not enough to make you think on the surface that they will be able to rock the Rays that they're like they hope they will.
All righty, gentlemen. Well, that about wraps it up for the DS, of the AL and the NL. So until the next round, we can't really get into much further analysis, but let's get some early postseason predictions going on here. Dame, who do you think we're gonna finally see in the World Series?
I think it's gonna be a rematch from last year. I have the Dodgers and the Rays. The Dodgers, just like I said before, they just have the overall best roster, and in the AL, I just think the Rays. They just keep getting it done one way or another. I'd have them against the Astros, and I just think they're gonna just wear down the Astros. They're gonna actually shut down that offense because they have so many different kind of weapons in that bullpen to do it. And I see them do it last year, although they were up 3-1. And the Astros came back, like, they still were up 3-1. And this year, I think they're going to learn from that. And if they are up in that situation, I think they'll close it out pretty early. But I do have the Dodgers and the Rays. Do you want me to give my winner?
Who you got winning it?
I have the Dodgers winning it. I think they're going to go back-to-back this year. The Rays, at the end of the day, the Dodgers do have what it takes to match up with the Rays. They do have that starting pitching. They do have that elite bullpen, and they do have that lineup. That's not only a couple guys in the middle of the order, but from top to bottom. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, they just have the same kind of roster structure as the Rays, but just better. Like, they have that Mookie Betts, they have that Cody Bellinger, they have that Trey Turner. Like they have these guys that the Rays have that are so situationally great, but just better. In my it makes sense to me when I say it.
No, we got a saying here. It's basically they're the Dodgers light. We just throw whatever team you think they are, just throw the word light.
Yes, basically, yeah. Dodgers light, but just obviously a bit more star power in those kind of positions.
Yeah, for sure. Jurg, I'm gonna just throw it in real quick. I 100% agree with Dame. That's my matchup. That's who I got winning it as well. Just you see the trades they made this season and overall structure. He said it best, so I'm not going to get deeper into it. Jurg, do you see different than us?
I will, just for the purposes of the show, for the viewers. No, I like Dame kind of mentioned it. I do have Astros and Rays in the ALCS, and I know you bring up the point that they were up on them last season. Yes, the Astros had to come back and they fell flat in that Game 7. But I think the Astros actually are the team best constructed on the AL side of things to challenge the Rays. I really do. I think to combat that Rays team that has a couple young pitchers in that lineup, you need experienced hitters. And Jose Altuve, like we've already said the names, Altuve, Bregman, Yordan Alvarez, Carlos Correa, all of them. I'm just saying names here to the point where like those guys are enough to match up with the Rays. And I think they actually could beat them. So I have the Astros making it out of the AL. And the NL, I have the Cardinals. No, I don't. I have the Los Angeles Dodgers making it out because I've stuck with them this entire time, literally since last season. I got a nice Astros-Dodgers World Series because after all the talk, all the champions from last year got criticized that, oh, it's a bubble championship, it's a COVID championship, it doesn't count. How nice would it be for the Dodgers to come back, breeze through the NL, make it back to the World Series, and who do they see across from them? The team that took a World Series from them, that they believe stole a World Series from them. And in a legitimate, no questions asked, no COVID, no buzzers, trash cans, whatever you want to put, like in a straight series, the Dodgers would win that, repeat with the back-to-back championships, being the first baseball team to repeat since, I believe, the early 2000s Yankees, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think anyone else has repeated since then in terms of winning the actual championships. A couple teams have made it in back-to-back years, but haven't won in back-to-back. But I would have the Dodgers winning it because, and I'd have them winning in 5 because, like Dame said, they're just supremely talented. And I think kind of like what Tampa Bay was in hockey, man. Like, I think this is a little bit of a different postseason where it feels like the supremely talented team, like they deserve the credence of going all the way this time because they're just different, man. They're just built different. Like I've already said it. Their top 2 options are Hall of Famers. Their top 2 options for pitching are Hall of Famers. They got a former NL MVP. They have technically 2 because Kershaw won one in his career. They have Kershaw and Bellinger. Maybe he lights it up for the playoffs, right? They have Betts, who is a former AL MVP. They have Trey Turner. They have Justin Turner. Like they just have the mashers.
They got it all.
They have it all, man. Like you said, Bars, the slogan for the show is "They're blank light," and the Rays are Dodgers light. And there's a reason why the Dodgers are the original because they are just the team. And I got to give it to them this time. I say the Dodgers will repeat back to back.
Well, speaking of back-to-back, unfortunately, we're towards the back end of the show. Dame, thank you for joining us, man. It was a pleasure having you. Can't wait to have you for when it's the AL and NLCS show. If you are willing to bless us with your graces,
of course,
we'd be more than happy to have you, man. Other than that, we've mentioned it plenty of times before. You can catch him on Thursdays on Somewhat Sports. Is there anything else that you're pushing out, man? Go ahead. Good people.
I have my own sports blogging page. I haven't wrote there in a while because I've been really busy with my new job, but you can go check out my old articles and some new ones that are coming out. Dame Sports WordPress. I worried about all sports, football, basketball, baseball. So if you're interested in reading a couple articles, not too long, it's good stuff. And I have also an Instagram page, same thing, _Dame Sports. And of course, like James mentioned, Thursdays, Somewhat Sports, great podcast as well. You can check that out as well. It comes out on Friday mornings, I believe.
Let me tell you guys, I think we're some funny people, me and Jurg, but I've been on that show, and that show has been dying I got to mute myself. I laugh too hard when I'm with you guys. But once again, man, thank you for coming. Be sure to check him out, guys. You heard him. there's very few times we have a guest that makes me feel dumb about baseball. And today was one of those times. So, Dave, thank you once again, man, for coming on.
Thank you for being dressed, by the way, unlike, shirtless wonder over here.
Whoa, Jurg, you told me you were going to open up the show a certain way. I had to flex a little bit. If you're not going to do it, I'm going to do it. I ran a Spartan race this Sunday. Jurg said he had this whole intro for me coming up. So, I had to pop out the muscles real quick.
I took that away after you had to wear that.
Look, I brought the whole medal and everything. I was ready to show everybody, but whatever. But either way, everybody, you know the drill, guys. Follow us, like, subscribe, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, Twitter. Been trying to be more active with the Twitter. I think we have been, but we'll be even more active with it. Other than that, guys, you know where it is. Wednesday, 7 p.m. Thank you once again. Jurg K40 on Twitter. Bars Talks on Twitter. Have a great night, guys.